With 15 days to go until the presidential election, the major presidential hopefuls, including the DP's Lee Jae-myung and the PPP's Kim Moon-soo, campaign in the capital Seoul today, a key battleground. Overseas voting for the 21st presidential election begins tomorrow for a 6-day run in 118 countries around the world. For the first time, voters in Cuba and 3 other countries in Europe will be able to cast their ballots, with diplomatic missions newly added. Korean trade officials are set to travel to Washington as early as tomorrow for negotiations amid the U.S. Treasury chief seemingly putting pressure on other countries, saying tariffs will return to a higher level if they do not negotiate in, quote, good faith. It's May 19th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start our coverage with the campaign trail. The Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung made stops in busy areas across Seoul today, seeking support from voters of all ages. Our Shin Ha-young reports.
The Democratic Party's candidate Lee Jae-myung is back in Seoul and continued his campaign rallies, making stops in busy areas across the city after traveling south last week. He kicked off his Monday campaign by visiting the Korean Senior Citizens Association, where he thanked the older generation for playing a big role in South Korea's growth and asked them to share their wisdom with the younger generation.
After meeting elderly voters, Lee Jae-myung continued his rally at Seoul's busy Yongsan Station Plaza, aiming to reach both younger and older generations to highlight unity across age groups.
Life is tough, isn't it? Things feel unstable. On June 3rd, let's bring this to an end. Let's build a new country together, one where people are truly respected and where peace and stability lead to a better, happier life.
Ahead of the rally on Monday, he addressed real estate issues, saying that he will manage real estate policy by increasing supply when it's lacking, following the basic principle of supply and demand. The Democratic Party is strengthening security for Lee after receiving multiple reports of suspected assassination threats against him. Starting from Monday, Lee began delivering his rally speeches from behind bulletproof glass. This comes as concerns over Lee's safety are growing within the party and among his supporters, especially after he was stabbed in the neck during a visit to Busan in January last year. He has already been wearing a 3-kilogram bulletproof vest while campaigning.
Inequality, polarization, and insurrection have pushed our society into extreme division and conflict, to the point where a presidential candidate now has to wear a bulletproof vest while campaigning.
His camp is also keeping people away from areas near the stage, and he's avoiding physical contact with supporters, such as shaking hands. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo had the chance to share his vision for the ROK-U.S. alliance at American Chamber of Commerce in Korea. He also hinted at possibly merging with Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok, who rejected the idea. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
On the campaign trail on Monday, People Power Party candidate Kim Moon-soo emphasized the ROK-U.S. alliance, saying that he will meet with U.S. President Donald Trump as soon as he's elected amid the ongoing tariff negotiations.
If I'm elected president, I will visit the United States as early as June to hold a prompt summit with President Trump and swiftly resolve issues that are hindering economic cooperation between our two countries.
The comments came during a luncheon with the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea. He added he'll promote Korea-U.S. business cooperation in advanced technology and culture, not just security. Kim also pledged to remove unnecessary regulations to attract more foreign investment. This comes after Kim claimed his DP rival Lee Jae-myung is too pro-China during the first televised debate the night before. In other campaign activities and rallies around Seoul, he also gave pledges to the younger generations on Coming of Age Day, vying to create jobs, expand opportunities, and ease financial burdens related to marriage and housing. Meanwhile, much attention was given to his gesture toward the Reform Party's Lee Jun-seok with an idea of conservative and anti-Lee Jae-myung alliance looming over the election scene. The two met at a Seoul City event where Kim apologized for the PPP's past treatment of Lee when he was party chair and praised his debate performance from the night before. During the Amcham talk, Kim also hinted that a merger may be possible.
Things are gradually improving. If you watched the debate yesterday, you would have seen Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok. He used to be our party leader, and now he's out there representing a certain segment. If I can bring together people like him and unify our efforts, I believe we can bring about significant change.
Lee Jun-seok has so far rejected the idea of a merger, and the current polls show that even combined, their ratings trail DP's Lee Jae-myung. But with the election now just 2 weeks away, a last-minute conservative alliance could still shift the race. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Eyes of the voters in the country were on the first televised presidential debate on Sunday night, with clashes on economic and trade policy. And the four debaters on the stage looked as equally focused on controversies surrounding their rivals as addressing ways to tackle economic challenges. Lee Soo-jin fills us in.
Pledging to save Korea from its present economic downturn, the four main presidential candidates held their first televised debate live on Sunday, beginning with the task of improving livelihoods. Democratic Party candidate Lee Jae-myung promised big government spending with funding towards debt forgiveness for small business owners, more research and development in AI, and new industries in energy and culture.
We need a supplementary budget as soon as possible, within feasible limits, to revive domestic demand and everyday livelihoods.
The People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo agreed on boosting spending to offer subsidies and debt restructuring for small firms. He pledged to be a jobs president, using regulatory reform to support growth in high-tech sectors.
By eliminating excessive regulations, businesses won't feel forced to move abroad and can confidently operate locally and create jobs.
Reform Party leader Lee Jun-seok opposed reckless injections of money in a time of high inflation and low demand, saying it will hurt, not benefit, small companies. He proposed regional governments set their own minimum wage and focus more on building national competence in sectors critical to economic growth.
To beat China, we need not only an understanding of science and technology, but also competent leadership that can communicate freely with global leaders.
Meanwhile, the Democratic Labor Party's Kwon Young-guk focused on overcoming inequality for workers, farmers, women, and minorities.
A world where you work hard yet remain poor, where you are driven further to the margins. This unequal world must not be left as it is.
With the topic turning to America's tariffs on its trading partners, Lee Jae-myung said negotiations must begin, but Korea must also diversify its export items. He said the door should stay open to Russia and China. Kim Moon-soo promised to hold a summit with U.S. leader Donald Trump and resolve the bilateral issues based on their personal trust. Lee Jun-seok suggested a cool strategic response that highlights South Korea's strength in semiconductors and its value as Washington's long-standing security partner. Kwon Young-guk showed the U.S. a red card and said he will not submit to predatory trade tactics. The two candidates leading the polls face intensive questioning. Lee Jae-myung was under fire over his proposed wind power project largely involving Chinese firms and his alleged affinity with Beijing. He was also grilled on alleged illegal payments made to North Korea during his time as Gyeonggi-do province governor, with the Reform Party candidate suggesting Lee's plans to legalize domestic spot cryptocurrency ETFs could also potentially fund North Korea. Meanwhile, Kim Moon-soo was strongly criticized for being a part of the impeached Yoon Suk-yeol administration as former labor minister. Lee Jae-myung said Kim should share the blame for the sluggish economy, and Kwon Young-guk slammed Kim's endorsement of allowing extra working hours for semiconductor workers. The next live debate will take place on Friday, focusing on social issues. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
The 21st presidential election kicks off early for overseas Koreans. Voting for Korean nationals overseas will begin on Tuesday in more than 100 countries around the world. And for the first time, polling stations have been newly established in Cuba, Luxembourg, Lithuania, and Estonia. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
Overseas voting for South Korea's 21st presidential election will begin around the world on Tuesday in 118 countries. According to the National Election Commission, overseas ballots for registered voters will be held over 6 days at 182 Korean embassies, consulates, diplomatic missions and offices. Voting hours are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 41 additional polling stations have been installed, where the number of overseas nationals exceeds 30,000. In the United States, these include the states of New York, California, Massachusetts and Texas, which will open from Thursday to Saturday. Voting booths were also added for the Korean military's Dongmyeong unit in Lebanon and the Hanbit unit in Uganda. Specific locations can be found on consulate websites. Voters must have registered beforehand and bring a government-issued ID as well as a document to prove they are registered as Korean nationals. These include official documents for visas and permanent residency, which can differ according to the country, so voters must check the requirements on each embassy or consulate website. Also, citizens living abroad who are visiting Korea can join domestic voters at designated polling stations. But first, they must register in person between next Monday and June 3rd at an election office located in the district of their last registered Korean address. In this election, overseas polling stations were newly established for the first time in 4 countries where diplomatic missions were recently opened: Cuba, Luxembourg, Lithuania and Estonia. Over 258,000 are expected to cast overseas votes, 14% more than last year. Overseas ballots are returned to Korea via diplomatic pouches to be counted together with domestic votes after Election Day voting ends. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Korean trade officials are set to travel to Washington this week for talks on tariffs amid the U.S. Treasury chief putting pressure that tariffs will return to a higher level if countries don't reach agreements during the 90-day pause period. Our Bae Yoon-ji has more.
As South Korea seeks to reach a trade deal with the U.S. by early July, senior officials in Seoul are set to travel to Washington as early as Tuesday for talks on tariffs. This comes after South Korea's finance and trade ministers met with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer in late April and requested exemptions from higher levies. U.S. President Donald Trump on April 2nd announced a set of reciprocal tariffs on major trading partners, including South Korea, before putting a temporary pause to those levies for 90 days. He said on Friday that time is running out for countries to make trade deals with the United States.
And we have, at the same time, 150 countries that want to make a deal, but you're not able to see that many countries. So at a certain point over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think Scott and Howard will be sending letters out essentially telling people, it would be very fair, but we'll be telling people what they'll be paying to do business in the United States.
Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Bessent said in an interview with CNN on Sunday that Trump has put countries on notice that if they don't negotiate in good faith, tariffs will soon return to the April 2nd levels. Bessent also noted there are 18 important trading partners that the U.S. is most focused on solidifying deals with, while adding that there are a lot of smaller trading relationships. As the deadline looms, he said Washington may impose some tariffs by region rather than on individual countries. Addressing the concerns on tariff uncertainties, the Korean government earlier explained that this week's consultation will be focused on 6 key areas: balanced trade, non-tariff measures, economic security, digital trade, country of origin, and commercial considerations.
Yeah, so I think that connects to what I really think is the critical thing here, which is the economic security issue. So on that front, the White House would like to kind of get this big headline win on so-called friendshoring semiconductor and battery supply chains. That is, the U.S. kind of wants to have these supply chains run through an allied country like Korea.
With only about 50 days left until the July 8th deadline, when the temporary pause on tariffs is lifted, eyes are now on whether South Korea will be able to make some meaningful progress in this week's talks. 배은지, Arirang News.
In the Middle East, Israel has agreed to the basic flow of food into Gaza amid its launch of a fresh ground offensive against Hamas. Lee Yoon-jin has the latest.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office released a statement on Sunday, which stated that under the recommendation of the Israeli Defense Forces, it would allow a basic quantity of food into Gaza so that a starvation crisis would be avoided, as such a situation would jeopardize the IDF's latest extensive ground operation. It was not immediately clear when or how aid would enter Gaza, but Netanyahu said that Israel would work to ensure Hamas does not take control of the aid. The announcement came after the Israeli military said earlier on Sunday that it had begun extensive ground operations in the northern and southern parts of the enclave, named Operation Gideon's Chariot, including both active duty and reservist troops. The IDF said it would continue to operate against the terrorist organizations in the Gaza Strip in order to defend Israeli civilians, having conducted a preliminary wave of intensive airstrikes on more than 670 Hamas targets in Gaza over the past week to support Gideon's Chariot. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry reported significant civilian casualties of more than 400 people in the 4 days since the offensives began last week, including the more than 100 people killed in Gaza on Sunday. Meanwhile, there have been reports that no progress has been made in a new round of indirect talks between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas in Qatar. Netanyahu's office said his negotiating team in Qatar was working to realize every chance for a deal, but its position remained unchanged that fighting would end in exchange for the release of all remaining 58 hostages, the exile of Hamas terrorists from Gaza, and the disarmament of the territory. Hamas has refused to leave Gaza or disarm, as officials from the militant group said it was still proposing the release of all Israeli hostages in return for an end to the war, the pullout of Israeli troops, and an end to a blockade on aid for Gaza, and the release of Palestinian prisoners. Lee Yoon-jin, Arirang News.
Pope Leo XIV called for peace and unity at his inaugural Mass, delivering a message that resonated far beyond the Catholic Church. During the service on Sunday at the Vatican, he condemned economic systems that exploit the Earth's resources and marginalize the poorest, while also calling for peace in Ukraine and Gaza. Among the tens of thousands gathered for the address were believers and tourists alike, alongside world leaders. Following the Mass, the pontiff held a private meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. Joining us in the studio is our sports editor, Paul Need. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start with baseball. The KBO League has reached yet another attendance milestone.
Yes, 4 million fans in record pace. The KBO announced on Sunday that it had surpassed 4 million in a record 230 games. The previous record was 255 games set in 2012. This is just one of a few milestones already this year. 1, 2 and 3 million were all achieved in record time. And the pace at which KBO went from 3 to 4 million was also a record. 55 games beats the last record by 10. Meanwhile, speaking of records, Hanwha Eagle star Cody Ponce on Saturday in a 1-0 home win over the SSG Landers tied the KBO record for the most strikeouts in a single game with 18, level with Song Dong-yeol of the Haetae Tigers, set on June 19th, 1991.
And moving on to football now, Lee Jae-sung played a big part in his team securing European football for next season.
Yes, he's helped Mainz secure a spot in the UEFA Conference League. Mainz on Saturday earned a 2-2 draw at home to Bayer Leverkusen, with Lee Jae-sung winning a penalty kick for Jonathan Burkhardt to level just after the hour mark. He thought that he'd scored himself at one point, but the goal was disallowed for offside. But the point meant that Mainz finished in 6th place in the Bundesliga, their best finish since 2016. The following season was the last time Mainz played in Europe. Lee Jae-sung scored 7 and laid on 8 assists in 33 league appearances this season, his best return for the club. He joined them in 2021 and has so far played 123 times. His contract, though, is due to expire at the end of next season.
And finally to volleyball, the legend, that is Kim Yeon-kyung, has said goodbye to sport.
Yes, she waved goodbye to the fans at an all-star game on Sunday at the KYK Invitational 2025 All-Star Games Series at Incheon Samsan World Gymnasium this weekend. Kim took part as a player and coach in a 2-game series that on Sunday had Team Star take on Team World. Kim and Team Star won Sunday's match 80-63. The day before, Kim played with the World All-Stars and beat the women's national team 80-59. This past season, Kim and the Hankook Life Insurance Pink Spiders won the regular season and championship titles. This meant that she's won 5 V-Leagues in total and 4 championships. She also played and won trophies in Turkey and Japan and led the national team to the semi-finals of the Olympics in 2012 and 2020.
An incredible career. All right, Paul, thanks for that. See you next time.
Thank you.
Two different skies appear today in the central and southern parts of the country. The center areas are affected by rain clouds from the afternoon, having cloudy skies. The expected rainfall will be up to 20 millimeters in the Seoul metropolitan area and Gangwon-do province, and up to 10 millimeters in the Chungcheong-do provinces. This rain will mostly stop by early tomorrow morning. A preliminary warning for strong winds is in place. Typhoon-like gusts of more than 50 meters per second will hit the East Sea and the West Coast, and winds of 25 meters per second or more will hit the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province and Gyeongsangbuk-do province until dawn tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, Seoul and Gyeongju will start off at 17 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon at 16 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 27 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 25 degrees in Jeju. Rain is forecast throughout the east on Wednesday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.